Hey everyone, it's Gary from Gary's Place. This is Gary's Place. Welcome to Gary's Place. So I wanted to go over a few things today. Sorry, I got the printer going in the background. Always makes a little bit of noise, but I'm a creator. I can't stop. It's got to keep going, you know. Especially when I only got the one printer going, so I got to do everything on that. But today I wanted to talk about a couple of things. Number one, I wanted to talk about sports, and I wanted to go through a few things I figured out in my designs that might help some people out. The design process obviously takes some time. You're going to be doing a lot of printing, and I've got a few tips and tricks here that might help you out in that process and also might make the process go a little quicker. A little quicker, a little easier, a little less expensive. Always the best part, right? And I see I have my leaning tower of spools here next to me. But anyways, so let's get started. I'm gonna break now and then jump into another video. All right, guys. See you in a second. Okay, guys. So got a few things here on the table. I think what I wanted to start with was some supports. I actually just spent about an hour cleaning my space here. You can see still little bits of stuff laying around. Print after print after print, right? You got to keep going. So. First thing I wanted to talk about was some supports. Okay, so I'll start with this example here. Get all that out of the way. This was obviously a failed print, but I kept it for two reasons. One, I want to do a video on jams, which I will do probably right after this one. But I wanted to show you guys some tree supports here. Now, I don't know if you've played around with tree supports. I haven't really been doing them for too long, but to be quite honest, I think it's a great way to save some filament. Okay, so when I first printed this, and I'll show you what the print looks like. This is my spool holder. You can find that on Thingiverse. Just look up Gary's Place. I also have some videos out on it. But as you can see, let me spin this around here. So that printed pretty much like that. So this is not sitting on the build plate. I guess I probably could have let it down like this, but I thought these tracks here. Okay, so these are made to fit right into a 2040 extrusion. They just slide right in, kind of like T-nuts. But I wanted to print this as flat as I possibly could. Now, the first few times I printed this, I used the standard supports. And as you can see, standard supports, that is a lot of filament. Just because it completely fills the area underneath. And then, you get your slightly rough surface down here. I was still playing around with the tree supports when I printed this one out. I would make a note, though, that when you're using tree supports, first of all, with this geometry, it probably wasn't the best idea for me to crank the speed up. Bringing this back down to 50 probably would have, 50 millimeters a second would have probably given me a bit better surface here. But in my standard supports, I noticed that if I print that amount there and don't leave a decent gap, it's pretty well solidly welded to it. This is also PETG, and didn't really break away that well until I put a decent gap in there. Well, when you're using tree supports, as you can see, there's a lot of filament savings because you are not, this whole area would have been completely filled with filament. And as you can see, this just kind of branches up the trees. I have the full deal here. So that was the whole thing, and I think that used about half the support material that the standard. Let's see if I get a better view there. See those nice tree tree branches. As you can see, that definitely did not use anywhere near as much film as if this were fully solid. I still use the support interface. That usually makes it so you get a better surface underneath. However, in my case, when I printed this, I still had... get a nice little close-up here. So, not such a great surface, okay? So I found that if I'm using tree supports, I usually just completely take out that Z-gap between the support, and they break right off. I haven't had an issue getting them off, but you know, you get a lot better print quality. Okay, so there's that. So I reprinted out I had to make an adjustment to this part. This is also on Thingiverse. This is so I could add a V6 hot end. Anybody who's been watching my been watching any of my videos or been keeping track of my channel knows that I have been doing a lot of videos on this. Finally got this to where I wanted it, but there's a few things. I had to make this cutout quite a bit larger, and that was because, I'll show you here on the printer, I wanted it to ride above that extrusion there. I noticed that after I got everything cranked down nice and tight, it wasn't dragging on it, but it was very lightly touching it, and I didn't like it, so I figured, you know what the heck, that's something I wanted to change, so I did that. And then I also made this, see if you guys can see that a little better. Whoa, way off camera there. I made this portion right here stick out a little bit farther to kind of guide that wire a little better and keep it out of the way of the light. So I'll be installing that later. I'll have a video on that when I install this and that spool holder that I just showed you. But the tree supports were great for that. Okay, when I first did it, it was really hard to remove the supports, and I'll show you why. So this prints up like this, okay? When the full supports were put in, on normal support mode, this whole channel would fill up with support, all the way up to there. Okay, and then on the outside, it had to support up to here, and support here, and then support underneath that, support through here, and then had to bring up support through here, and through that hole, and then it would support this whole backside, and it was just terrible to get these supports off. And I saved a piece of the tree support. This would have kind of gone on just like that, something like that. But that's like the majority of the support. I think there was a little piece right here. But outside of that, that was the whole support. So it definitely saved me some plastic there. And also too, if you can see the way this kind of like cups around it, and I think my XY, I have it, I think it's 1.2 millimeters, something like that. This pretty well just ripped right off. I just maybe got a little screwdriver, a little pair of pliers. Always keep some pliers around. And just ripped that sucker right off, and you know what? No issues whatsoever. A little cleanup, no big deal. You know, so I have definitely become a big fan of tree supports. Now, that's not to say that tree supports are right for every situation. I will show you another one here. So, this is a little tower garden that I've been working on lately. I printed the one off of Thingiverse. However, it uses too much plastic. It's not big enough. I do have I have the larger print size. So why would I want to make something so small when I could make it larger and do a lot more with it? However, so I did some prototyping. Now this is This was scaled down to 30%, okay? And I did that for a couple of reasons. And one, it saved me a lot of filament, and I could print it, and I could see how it was going to work, and I could kind of get a general idea. I know it's not as strong because it's only 30% as thick, but there's a lot I could learn from this at this scale. And, you know, it's really the difference between, I think, a 13-hour print or like an hour and 20-minute print. So, huge difference there. Obviously, lots of, I saved a lot of plastic by doing this, and this was one of my big tips for you guys. While you're prototyping, because I went through a whole bunch of these. This would have been days and days of printing if I would have done these at full size. Okay, and I, believe it or not, have a lot more in a box over there. But, scaling things down while you're prototyping is one of the biggest things I can tell you guys. It'll save you time, it'll save you money, and it'll certainly save me plastic here. And so back to the supports. As you can see, this is the standard support. Okay. So I decided just to see what it would do with tree. I'd been having such good luck with the tree supports. I figured, hey, let's find out what a tree support would look like for this thing. So in this case, we probably used 2 or 3 times the amount of support material. So no savings there. And I tell you, I got another one of these that the reason I didn't take the support out of this one was because I printed another one, and it took me so long to get rid of all of the support material and to break it up because, this stuff's actually pretty strong. Ooh, that was my finger. But, these supports are actually pretty strong, and I've got this turned down to 5%, 5% on the supports. So, definitely want to let you guys know that tree support is not for everything, but you know what, it is definitely worth giving a try, because especially on these larger prints like that, that tree support saved me a lot of time. And also too, we're talking a lot of time here. I mean, for it to fill up this entire thing, that, probably half an inch thick or better, maybe 3/4 of an inch. That takes a lot of time to push out that much plastic. So, give it a try. Now, on to a couple more things I learned here. So you can see this is a net pot. Again, this was supposed to be full size, but by the time I printed it and then I put it together in assembly in my modeler, I found out that this is just way too short. They got to be, I don't know, a good 1.5 inches, 2 inches longer than this. But I really, really did not want to print this full of support. It seemed like when I put it through Cura, no matter how I supported it, I mean, it was taking a ridiculous amount of time and a lot of plastics to support this. And to me, I'm looking at it like this. I don't really see why I would really need support going all the way up here. Now, the supports did print inside these holes to kind of bridge up to the top. And granted, I think printing without supports, I probably did lose some quality here, but I printed this without support. But my biggest question was, when I printed this without support, what was going to happen when I got to the top? So it printed like this. How is it going to print that top? And I thought to myself, well, you know what, I could probably print it like this. But with this design I had, there's a locking mechanism up here that would lock this net pot into one of these holes, which I later got rid of anyways, but I thought to myself, well, it's going to still print a lot of support material going all around this, because this is definitely going to need some support. So I spent a little time, and I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and print it without support and see what happens. Well, my first go, I don't really know that I would call it a failure. I mean, obviously didn't look right. It obviously didn't work properly, but my first go didn't look that bad. The biggest problem I could see was is that when it started printing these circles, it prints around the edge here, and then it starts printing in the center, and of course if there's nothing there for it to print on, well, it's just going to be trying to print in midair. So I lost a few layers, but it seemed like after the first couple of layers, it actually caught back up and did print the end of it. Now I have since made it thicker, but my solution to this is when I went back into my model, and I added a solid layer just below the top there. So just below where it started printing the top of this, I had it print a really thin, solid layer, which I called a sacrificial layer. And pretty much it tried bridging that all the way across, which didn't work that well, but that actually worked in my favor. But it printed it was able to bridge just enough to be able to put down the first layer, and to be quite honest, I would call that a decent print, especially for not having any support in there. It's a little rough on the inside. Sorry it's so reflective. But if you see at the bottom there's a couple of strings. That was that sacrificial layer. I didn't rip it out because this is obviously not a part I'm actually going to be using. This was kind of more of a test print just to see what would happen. But I got to be honest, a sacrificial layer seemed to make a huge difference here. So if you guys are designing stuff and don't want to waste all that plastic and time to print that much support, because it would have literally filled this entire cup with plastic, which was a ridiculous amount. And yeah, okay, I didn't get the best surface quality on the inside, but for what this is going to be used for, I'm not worried about that. Obviously, I could spend a little more time cleaning it up, but, this is, this piece printed without support, I'd say I'm happy with that. So, sacrificial layers, if you guys want to give that a shot, please do. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is one more tip I have for you that has been helping me save some time and money in some of my designs. So, as you can see, this looks familiar. It's the top of that cup, okay? When I first printed this, I wanted to see how this would print before I, decided to just print the whole thing. But I wanted to see how this locking mechanism was going to work. So I printed this. I pretty much cut off the rest of it in the modeler, and then printed just this portion of it. So printing the functional pieces of the things that you're designing, just to make sure that they work. So like right now, this is a full-size top to one of these. Obviously there have been some revisions. I did end up, putting a ledge in here, and this all printed without supports. I put a nice long, large fillet underneath here, so it kind of prints over and then prints the next layer. So I was able to get it to an overhang to where I didn't actually need supports underneath it, as long as I drove my support angle to 55. So this again, printed without supports. As you can see, this is that fillet in the full-size version of it, and then of course the rest of it would have printed up. But there's a locking mechanism because these are supposed to interlock with each other. So I figured I would just slice, I would go into my model, I would slice off everything underneath this, because this is the top of it, to get this locking mechanism printed. And then right now on my printer, I'm printing the base. Okay, so I cut everything off above this. It's actually just about done printing. Just so I could make sure that this locking mechanism was going to work properly. It was going to be strong enough. You know, I did play around with the width of this unit just because I wanted to try to save as much plastic as possible. I think you know, this is going to be, I want to say it's going to be a little over a foot tall, and I believe this circle is 9 inches. Okay, so it's also going to have, obviously, these sticking out of the side, which these are, I think, 3 inches around going up. So I was able to cut this thin enough to where this will print with less than 400 grams of plastic. So my main goal with this was to cut down on the plastic, make it functional, make it solid. You know, make all the little interlocking mechanisms work properly, but also use as much plastic and print with as short of a period of time. I think, you know, I got this down so that the whole thing, when it's done, you know, again, this is 30% of the size, is going to take like 12 or 13 hours. So, I mean, it's not that bad for the size that we're talking about here. So, with this, I also went into my 3D modeler and I just cut this off here, got rid of everything there, and I'm just going to print out this portion of it with another ring, because I've updated this part since I printed that, just to make sure everything snaps in together there and holds a nice tight fit. You know, there's a base to this that has an interlocking piece. I'm going to print out the interlocking piece because it's just a small, you know, cylinder there, and then I, you know, cut that off as well and printed that out. So printing these things in pieces, yes, it's a bit of a waste, but I would much rather print out this small piece and that small piece to decide if I have to make any adjustments here before I print my final product, than to have to print 2 of these at 12 to 13 hours a piece. So I've got a whole day, you know, plus almost a whole spool of filament. You know, I just, I think this is a much better way. I believe this took, you know, 60 grams of filament, and I think that takes about 100 because it has a little more detail to it and some more supports. But I think that this is a much better and quicker and cheaper way of deciding whether this interlocking system is going to work and whether this whole thing is going to be strong enough to survive when I'm going to put it through. So I think that's pretty much all I have. You know, I did have some other projects I've been working on. However, you also got to know sometimes you're going to have to print things full size just to make sure that they fit. You know, this is a cover for a 6-inch net pot lid. I went through a few different designs. You know, I decided I wanted to put a neoprene in that. Then I decided I wanted it to be a cup in the bottom, you know, so as you can see that. But I also needed it to be slit here, you know, and then one of these is too thick because it doesn't, you know, I can't spread this properly. You know, unfortunately, sometimes you are going to have to do full-size prints, you know, especially if you're trying to make something to fit something else that you didn't design. And you can, you know, model it and, you know, put it together as an assembly, but I found that this took less time, especially because I did most of these prints while I was sleeping. You know what I mean? You know. So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope there was some content in this that, you know, can help you. I'm sorry if I went on a little long rant, but I did have a lot to cover here. Maybe I should have separated this out into a few videos, but I think I'm going to keep it all together. So thanks for stopping at Gary's Place, where you're always welcome. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any comments or suggestions, you know, like, for instance, that sacrificial layer on that, if you have any other tips or tricks that you want to share, please do in the comments below. Again, if you like the content, please subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. All right. Take care and happy printing.